To kick off our program, please welcome your host, the Sacramento Bee's Dan Schnur.
Well, I want to welcome all of you to today's program. As you just heard, my name is Dan Schnur, and I've had the good fortune to meet many of you over the course of my time in California politics and public policy. In just a minute, I'm going to talk with you about what we're going to hope to accomplish today as part of today's program. But what I will tell you is that in my role as host, I have a very specific responsibility, which I will get to in 1 minute. My job is to thank as many people as possible. That's what hosts do. So what I'm going to do to start out with, before I thank our sponsors, before I thank the extraordinary team, Mike and his team at the Milken Institute for all the work they've done, I'm going to ask all of you to thank you, yourselves, and I will tell you why. As some of you know, for many years, I ran the USC Los Angeles Times statewide political survey. Yeah, that one, Phil. And in that poll, several years ago, we did a survey in partnership with the California Community Foundation, in which we polled not candidates, not even issues, but we surveyed on the question of community involvement and engagement, volunteerism, philanthropy, other ways of getting people involved in their neighborhoods, in their cities, their states, their countries, getting involved in a cause greater than their own self-interest. And what we found at the core of that survey was the question of trust. And we asked our respondents in this poll, we said, who do you trust to guide you? Who do you trust to make the right decisions on behalf of your community, your city, your state, your country? This poll was taken about 5 or 6 years ago, and even so, I don't think the results will surprise many of you very much at all. What we found is that Angelenos and Californians didn't trust many people at all to make those decisions for them or even give them guidance on how to make those decisions for themselves. Did they trust politicians? Not so much. Lucky for us, we have some happy exceptions today. Our Treasurer, Chung, our State Senate Pro Tem, Toni Atkins, our Mayor of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg, are all here today. But for the most part, elected officials were not particularly well trusted. How about the private sector? CEOs, business, once again, we have exceptions to that rule here today. Some of California's most respected jobs creators who are exceptions to the overall lack of trust that many Californians have for the leaders in our private sector as well. How about the nonprofit sector? Well, although the numbers were a little bit higher, what we found with some concern is that Californians were not particularly trustful of those who devote themselves to nonprofit and foundation work as well. Pretty desolate findings. But here's the good news. We found that when our respondents, when Angelenos, when Californians were asked who they would trust, they said if our public sector and our private sector and our nonprofit sector stand together, that would establish the level of trust necessary for the people of our region, for the people of our state, to come together behind that leadership. And I think what's really remarkable about today's, not just today's conference, but the work that the Milken Institute is doing in these critically important fields, is that they're bringing all three of our sectors together. I see leaders from our public sector, and you'll hear from them shortly. I see leaders from our private sector who you'll hear over the course of the day. Certainly leaders from our nonprofit and foundation world too. And hopefully what we can accomplish over the course of the day is finding ways for our three legs of this stool of trust to move forward together and to find ways collectively to tell the people of California, we are all in this together, and take that trust that maybe none of us has individually, but collectively we can use to move forward. So before, in my role of host, I asked you to thank many, many, many people. I'm going to start out by asking you to give a round of applause to yourselves, to each other, because it's that collective engagement, it's that kind of teamwork that's going to make the challenges that we're going to discuss today a little bit less vexing and a little bit more solvable. So you're going to be asked to applaud all sorts of people all day long. You may as well start by applauding the person you want to applaud the most. Phil, applaud yourself. And the rest of you, please give yourselves a round of applause. So the Milken Institute, as all of you know, focuses on a number of policy matters. And over the course of the day today, we're going to focus on a few of them. We're going to talk about housing. We're going to talk about job creation. We're going to talk about higher education. We're going to talk about gender equity. But the one thing that I hope that all of you will get out of today's program is that we're not going to solve anything today. As smart as all of you are, and as good as Mike and his team at the Institute are at what they do, we're not going to solve the state's housing crisis today. We're not going to resolve all the challenges for California's jobs and economic climate. We're not going to resolve pressing and critical questions of gender equity. Hopefully what we're going to do today is we're going to make a start. And we are going to be part of a conversation that starts today. And think of today not as a drive-by, not as a one-shot deal. Think of today as a foundation in which we begin a series of conversations about how to take on the challenges that we'll be discussing today and so many others as well. One of the reasons I was asked, I believe, aside from the fact that I'm very good at thanking people, to host today's conference is because of the role I've now taken on with the Sacramento Bee as the director of their California Influencers Project. In our Influencers series, which hopefully many of you have seen either in the Bee or its sister newspapers or on our Bee or McClatchy website, we're devoted to the same kind of ongoing conversation that the team at Milken is and that all of you are as well. Once a week, every Monday, we post on our website and print in our papers 2 articles. One article is a summary of responses from 60 of California's foremost political and policy leaders on a pressing issue that the state faces: education, immigration, housing. And every week, all election long, we're going to convene these influencers. Former governors Davis and Wilson, former Senator Boxer, former Chief Justice Ron George, Janet Napolitano, Eloy Oakley, Tim White, and any number of other Californians who are experts in policy, government, or politics, not to solve these issues in one conversation or one article or even one election season, but to continue the conversation and working with people like Mike and his team at the Milken Institute and working with all of you to make sure that we can have the kind of conversation that's necessary to successfully resolve these challenges. One thing before I forget, most important thing for everyone here, Wi-Fi connection. You've probably over the last 4 or 5 minutes been thinking, oh my gosh, how do I check my email? Don't worry, help is on your way. Username, CA Policy 2018, password Milken 2018. Obviously, we want you to listen. We want you to hang on every word of every speaker and every panelist. But on the off chance that you have to do a little bit of work while you're here, or if you want to tweet out something particularly brilliant that you hear from John Chung in just a little while, this is the Wi-Fi that allows you to do it. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'm going to offer you a couple of examples of the kind of topics that we're going to take on today, the kind of challenges that fortunately our speakers and our panelists will be able to go into much more detail. But this is something I wanted to talk about just to frame our thinking for the day. Here you see a slide from the smart people at Milken that shows, as you see, that the demand for college workers will outstrip supply by 2030. And as someone who teaches at USC and at the University of California, Berkeley, this is something that I'm acutely aware of, and I know that most of you are as well. We're not going to have enough college graduates, so there's a demand. Next, tuition and fees have increased dramatically at UC and CSU, and unhappily at private colleges and universities as well. So what does that mean? At the same time that our demand is growing dramatically, we are doing everything we can to discourage supply. by making it as difficult as possible for smart young people to achieve an affordable college education. I get to spend 15 or 20 seconds on this. Later today, though, you'll hear a really smart conversation in which our panel discusses this in much more detail and much more specificity. What we also see as a challenge, of course, is something that all of you know either statistically or intuitively, that California's diverse college population is unevenly distributed. So at a time when our demand for college graduates is growing, at a time when we are discouraging supply, we are not taking full advantage of the richness and diversity of California's population in order to populate the ranks of those college graduates, a related but separate and critically important question. Similarly, just as a reminder, Wi-Fi connection. Clearly, the people who put this slideshow together have seen my remarks and know that you need to be reminded regularly that you can check email at any opportunity. So let's go on. Another challenge, of course, the gender equity conversation we'll be having later today. And you'll be very fortunate because one of the best things for me about working on this California Influencers Project with McClatchy News Service and the Sacramento Bee is I get to work with the Bee's new executive editor, Lauren Gustus, and Lauren is going to be moderating the discussion early afternoon on gender equity. I think will be a particularly important, particularly interesting conversation. But same challenge. More demand for college graduates, less supply, challenges in terms of the ethnic and demographic diversity of our college, of our college undergrads and graduate students. Same thing on the gender side. A California woman has slightly less education on average compared to the rest of the country. Not surprisingly, therefore, the number of females in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math has been stagnating in California across the US. And not surprisingly, as a result, the female labor force participation in California is lower compared to the United States. And so what we end up is, in order to prepare for these challenges, the economic challenges, the housing challenges, all the other policy matters that Milken and all of you have taken on, as we're preparing our next generation of leaders, when we need them more than ever, we're making it harder than ever for them to achieve their college education and their college graduation. And we're not doing everything we can to take, again, full advantage of the broad range of talented young Californians who can help us through these challenges. Yes? Wi-Fi? Now I finally get to thank yous. And before I introduce our first speaker, I do have a few thank yous that I'd like to offer. Most notably, the folks at Blue Shield California and JPMorgan Chase have been very, very generous in their support not only of today's program, but any number of projects in which the Milken Institute has taken on over the years. Please give them a round of applause. The Institute has a number of other strategic partners, as you can see here. I'm not going to read through all of them, but I believe you have materials that list them all. Most of you probably work with some or all of these entities. Once again, we are very grateful to them for the support they've given us, which allows us to have conversations like these. So let's give them a round of applause. A few other quick thank yous. One, of course, as I mentioned him a few times, but to Mike Klowden, who, of course, runs the Milken Institute, has done a phenomenal job in that role. Mike, thank you so much for the leadership that you've shown in not only today's program, but in the work that you've done at Milken. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Lauren Clausen and Matt Horton, who are the head of the California project for the Milken Foundation. They're in charge not only of today's event, but this ongoing conversation of which I've been speaking. And so after today is over, when we continue to face these challenges, Matt and Lauren and their team are going to be, and their team are the people you're going to be hearing from at Milken in order to keep you involved in the solution development process. So Lauren and Matt, thank you very, very much. Jeff Baum, Kevin Klowden, the entire team. I could stay here until 4 in the afternoon, and don't worry, I won't naming everyone at the Institute, but they're an incredible team. For those of you who get something valuable out of today's program, hopefully you'll have the good fortune of working with them going forward. So in addition to the few people I've just named, let's give a thanks of course, to the Institute's founder, Mr. Milken himself, but also to the extraordinary men and women who work on these issues every day. You're a tremendous team. Thank you very, very much. The last thing I get to do, at least for the time being, and I'll be joining you again throughout the rest of the day, albeit much more briefly, is I get to introduce our first speaker. And I'm particularly fortunate, you're even more fortunate, that we're going to hear in just a moment from a remarkable woman who many of you either know or know of. Diane Helfrey is the Vice President of Global Philanthropy for JPMorgan Chase. Many of you know of her, as I did, from her tremendous work for many years as the Executive Director of Social Venture Partners, one of the real visionaries in the nonprofit world in Southern California and throughout the state and throughout the country. And of course, she took on that responsibility at Social Venture Partners after many, many years as one of California's leading and most respected and most admired business executives. But today she's here not just as a private sector leader, but as a leading voice of philanthropy, of generosity, and community in the state of California. And if we're going to solve the kind of problems that we're going to be discussing today, it's because we're going to follow the leadership of people like Diane Helfrey. Join me in welcoming her. Diane, the stage is yours.
Wow, I think I'd like to meet her. You made me sound really great. Thanks, Dan, very much. And as Dan mentioned, I'm Diane Helfrey. I'm delighted to join you today as representing JPMorgan Chase as a member of our global philanthropy team based in Los Angeles. JPMorgan Chase is honored to be a partner and supporter of the Milken Institute because our organizations share many core elements in our missions. Essentially, to help diverse people and communities locally and globally to participate in broad-based economic growth and prosperity. At JPMorgan Chase, we believe there's a pressing need to help more people move up the economic ladder. Our efforts are focused on what our experience has shown to be universal pillars of opportunity: building skills for high-quality jobs of today and tomorrow, expanding small businesses, particularly minority-owned and community-based ones, revitalizing neighborhoods, and promoting financial health. We're putting our model into action with deeply committed partners through a series of strategic initiatives. And those are all based and informed by data and focus on strengthening the systems that are needed to deliver sustainable change. Over the next 5 years, we will be investing $1.75 billion to help drive inclusive growth in communities around the world. I think so too. It's pretty great to be a part of that, actually. As we seek the solutions that we look for to maximize our impact, we continually test, learn from, and iterate our approach. Our corporate responsibility model is yielding real results, and we hope it can serve as a template to others seeking to address social and economic challenges. Later this morning, you'll hear about 2 important projects led by the Milken Institute and supported by JPMorgan Chase. They are preparing California for the future of work and financing innovative housing solutions. The Future of Work project looks at how the economy continues to be transformed by technology, automation, and now artificial intelligence. And it will explore key questions around human capital, particularly for those workers at risk of being left behind as the labor market evolves. The project will also examine, develop, and test employer-driven models to assist workforce, education, and industry leaders in reshaping programs to train people in the skills needed to compete in the 21st century. Another pressing issue, of course, for California is our housing affordability crisis, which was a focus of the state legislature in 2017 and culminated in a 15-bill housing package. However, as we know, regulatory barriers persist at the local level and hinder development. So the Institute's Financing Innovative Housing Solutions project is addressing these barriers with the goal of accelerating housing supply for the missing middle, our residents living within 60 to 100% of area median income levels. Working with stakeholders from California's largest cities, the project will assist policymakers identify new financing mechanisms and incentives, and build consensus around implementation, because of course we want action. It's clear that workforce development and access to housing that's affordable are critical to the health and prosperities of communities across California. But they can't thrive without quality infrastructure that will support economic growth and prepare us for the long-term effects of climate change. Developing and financing our state's infrastructure will require public and private sectors to partner ever more closely, and it will require strong, committed leadership. Our next speaker knows that well. He's been leading the charge to grow the green bond market across the United States so that we can invest in our future sustainability. He's been a champion for innovative financing solutions and has collaborated with researchers, the investment community, policymakers, and most recently, the Milken Institute to help drive change. Please join me in welcoming the Treasurer of the great state of California, John Chung.
Well, good morning. It's an extraordinary privilege to join all of you this morning. I want to begin by thanking Diane for those kind words of introduction and the work that JPMorgan Chase is engaged in. I wanted to thank Dan for your longtime stewardship of this state, both in the public and private sector. And then I wanted to thank the Milken Institute for 20 years of friendship. Michael, thank you on so many different fronts. He is not here, but thank you for lending Ross Duvall, who has served on my Council of Economic Advisors, both as the state controller and state treasurer. I want to thank Kevin for your great attention to detail, your strong friendship. Kevin has always spearheaded a lot of the research that we've done in my previous positions, whether it's trade or convening with your dad, the Innovations Lab gathering we had for our Green Bond Summit in February of this year. I also like to thank the other members of the staff, Matt and Lauren and Caitlin, in specific for today and yesterday, and working on the convening of a little group that was working on substantive discussions in regards to green bond and climate finance policy. I just wanted to also highlight, Diane, the fact that you raised your partnership with the Milken Institute in regards to looking at middle-class housing, and I see our Senate President Pro Tem here who's also active in that space. With your great accumulation of detail and knowledge of people's financial habits, when you're trying to find that space for people in the middle, to come up with innovative financial products to help you understand when people are declining in regards to hours worked, in regards to people when they're experiencing financial tension, to come up with ideas and innovation to help people through those difficult times, I think gets to the point that Dan referenced at the beginning from Robert Putnam's book decades ago, Bowling Alone and the Loss of Civic Trust. At one point in Robert Putnam's book, when he was a professor at Harvard, he talked about 90% of the people trusting their neighbor. And then you go a few decades forward, that 90% dropped to 50%. During that same survey, 50% of the people trusted their elected officials. That dropped to 24%. So I think in that context of that poll, that makes sense. So what the point you made about all of us coming together, trying to find that space where people are financially struggling, witnessing a slow decline of the middle class here in California, creates the great opportunities that all of you here are to participate in. And so I am, along that lines, especially proud of the work and appreciative, as I stated earlier, to the Milken Institute for their longtime collaboration. As I referenced, in February of this year, we convened a Green Bonds International Convention, bringing the best thinkers to try to move this state, this nation, and this world in regards to advancing better policy tools. So I strongly believe that we are in the process of figuring out how we can pay for a society-wide transformation that must occur if we are to successfully deal with the unassailable scientific fact of climate change and wean ourselves off the carbon economy that has proven to be so destructive to our families, our state, and all the nations of this world that signed the historic Paris Agreement a mere 3 years ago. Basically, when it comes to the terms of the Paris Agreement operationally and to take the steps to save our planet, only one national government has repudiated the science every other nation and virtually every scientist on the planet accepts regarding climate change. And the full responsibility for this wrong-headed and delusional reaction of climate change falls on the head of our president, President Donald Trump. President Trump may dial up the efforts to mislead the American people into believing that climate change is a hoax created by the Chinese, but we Californians laugh at that lunacy because we know without doubt or reservation that the fate of the planet is at stake. Building critical public infrastructure and a future does not depend on fossil fuels. We know this is deadly serious business. So I have a message for our president. You will not stand in our way. The Earth is experiencing one record year of high temperatures after another. All around us here in California, wildfires are raging, destroying homes and ending lives. And each life of a firefighter lost, a precious child or someone who's elderly, is a testament to the extreme weather patterns and conditions related to climate change that President Trump refuses to acknowledge. So yes, I have a message for you, Mr. President. You will not stand in California's way. And here is why you will not stand in our way, Mr. President. California will lead with or without you. Because here I have a pledge. Here is an effective and underutilized path to financing the large-scale environmental change urgently needed to correct against the destructive effects of accelerating climate change. And here today, before this prestigious gathering of policymakers and top-level executives at the Milken Institute, California Policy Sacramento, here in Sacramento, with my signature as the treasurer of the state of California, California is proudly announcing that it is now the first state to sign the Green Bond Pledge. Under Governor Jerry Brown's leadership, California will be hosting Global Climate Action Summit, or GCAS, in San Francisco in mid-September. At that time, Mr. President, I think it is safe to say you will see a lot more of what just took place. The San Francisco Summit will showcase actions, including the Green Bond Pledge, states and regions, cities and companies, investors, and individual citizens are taking to realize the goals of the historic 2015 Paris Agreement. You will not stand in our way, Mr. President, because we don't need you. We can lock down the federal government and gag the scientists, or you can lock down the federal government and gag the scientists at the EPA to silence official talk about global warming. You can even attempt, and I emphasize attempt, to lower California's groundbreaking vehicle emission standards, which amounts to a tone-deaf and foolish effort to turn back the clock and refill California's skies with noxious gases that sicken our children and destroy our lungs. And even with all that, and that you attempt to destroy the good, the clean, the healthy, and the vibrant in California's people and our economy, Mr. President, you will not stand in our way. Because as I said earlier, we don't need you. Because now we know we can finance the large-scale transformation that must occur and will occur in California to combat climate change, using green financing. And with that, and by that, I mean specifically green bonds. Green bonds can pay for new climate-resistant transportation systems, clean and more drought-resistant water systems, and and all who will sign the Green Bond Pledge are in agreement, climate change poses an existential threat to our existence, and the rapid growth of a green bonds market will not only meet the unique challenges the world faces, but will do so while making communities more economically competitive, prosperous, and productive. Now, a little bit of a history. The green bond market started modestly in 2007 with bonds issued by the World Bank and the European Investment Bank. By 2017, both California and New York had issued more than $4 billion in bonds to finance such things as clean water projects, green schools, mass transit, and land preservation, and green housing. My office has handled more than $2.2 billion in green bonds for mass transit, clean water, pollution control projects, green buildings, and more. But these investments are minuscule when viewed against the nation's needs. Nationally, we face an estimated $4 trillion shortfall in meeting the gargantuan task of replacing or repairing our crumbling infrastructure. In California, independent reports estimate the shortfall to exceed $400 billion over the next 10 years. As Diane stated in her opening remarks, it takes quality infrastructures to support the health and prosperity of California's many communities. So we must get to work. We must build clean, green infrastructure that works in a new global economy in a high-tech world. The Green Bond Pledge aims to help accelerate the growth of green finance and is one of the most exciting developments in the world of bond financing to occur in our lifetimes. It is vital and irreplaceable opportunities in these dark days of climate change. And let me thank the international climate finance and environmental groups that developed the pledge, including the Climate Bonds Initiative, Mission 2020, CDP, CERES, Citizens Climate Lobby, the California Governor's Office, my staff in the Treasurer's Office, Global Optimism, NRDC, and the Climate Group. Here today, the Milken Institute and my office also are releasing the second of two groundbreaking reports on the green bonds market. The first report, a copy of which is available to all of you here today, resulted from a green bonds listening tour I conducted in 2016, meeting with market experts and investors in Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, and Boston to identify the barriers and challenges to growing the green finance market. One of the recommendations in that first report spurred me in 2018 to work with Michael Milken and the incredible Milken Institute think tank's Blue Ribbon Financial Innovations Lab to develop actionable steps to create a green bond market that is robust enough to take care of California, the nation, and the world's green financing of our infrastructure. The Innovations Lab went to work and produced a groundbreaking report released this morning. And here it is, and I hope all of you grab a copy. The report issued today includes among its suggestions improving market standardization, defining what is green, streamlining pricing. But that's just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Today, that would be the melting iceberg. Here's the conclusion of the report. I hope you are listening, President Trump, because this is shorter than the length of your normal tweet. Because California is widely recognized as a leader in environmental sustainability, pioneering efforts to streamline the green bond market can serve as a model for other states and countries. Building public infrastructure with future generations in mind is a must, not just in California, but everywhere on the planet. You can't hold us back from what needs to be done, Mr. President, because again, we don't need you. California will lead. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I hope you have a most productive conference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CEO of the Milken Institute, Michael Klowden.
Thank you very much, and that's the only thank you I'm going to do right now. There are too many others who have time in this. Our goal at the Milken Institute is to find solutions to the challenges confronting our state and our world. We do that, yeah, let's move this down here. How's that better? That better? Okay, great. We do that through an ambitious research agenda and by convening the best minds from across sectors and industries to find answers. We're a nonpartisan, publicly supported nonprofit. Now, we're headquartered in Santa Monica, but we have offices in Washington, D.C., London, Singapore, and we hold major convenings in each of those cities each year, as well as Abu Dhabi, as well as holding dozens of convenings of smaller size to solve problems throughout the country and the world. But although we're global in scope, our heart and our roots are here in California. For about 20 years, we've been holding conferences focusing on California as part of our broader mission. We do that because California is a leader in business, technology, science, and public policy. And California is known for charting its own path, and we know that others around the world attempt to follow that path. So to maintain our role, it's crucial that the California economy remains vibrant and growing, that we continue to nurture creativity and innovation, and that we build a social and economic climate that ensures opportunities for all Californians. We're living in a period of very rapid and often unsettling change. It's more important than ever that we continue to communicate with each other and collaborate on solutions to the challenges that we face. Now, it's our hope that this summit will provide a platform for doing just that. As we've discussed, we're going to talk about gender equality, affordable housing, the need for more skilled workers, and steps the next governor should take to expand California's leadership in international trade. With these challenges and opportunities in mind, it's my pleasure to introduce California State Senate President Pro Tem, Toni Atkins. Senator Atkins was elected to the State Senate in 2016 after serving as Speaker of the California Assembly. Before her election to the Assembly, she served on the San Diego City Council, and during her years in Sacramento, Senator Atkins championed the state's first earned income tax credit as a means of reducing poverty, oversaw passage of a landmark $7.5 billion water bond, authored State Senate Bill 2, which created a reliable source of funding for affordable homes, and has been a powerful advocate for women, veterans, the homeless, and the LGBTQ community. Please join me in welcoming Senator Toni Atkins.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for that welcome, Michael. I want to thank both Michaels, Michael Klowden and Milken. It is really an honor to be here today and certainly to follow a good friend, our state treasurer, who really gives us the information and data that we need to figure out how to find solutions. So it's really good, and again, happy belated birthday. We are one day apart, July 31st, August 1st. I always think of you on July 31st. It's great to be here, and it's really an honor to be asked. When I think of the Milken Institute, I think of thought leaders. Incredible thought leaders that help us really dive into the deep and important issues and give us the data, sometimes the science, the numbers, the financing tools and ideas to allow those of us that are elected officials be able to have a backup to be able to present solutions. You asked me, Michael, to talk about current and upcoming legislative priorities, shaping policy, the status of current challenges. And I have to say, I can give you a long laundry list of what we need to do. I can give you the list of what we have done, and I may do a little of that. But clearly, when I look at your agenda today, and both Michael and our treasurer alluded to it, you are really trying to look at how to grapple with some of our state's most pressing problems. And near the end of my comments, I may put a challenge to you for a different kind of help. Certainly when we look at our housing crisis, the future of our workforce, and all that entails that, whether we're talking innovation, technology, the role of education, all of those things you've put into your agenda, certainly gender equity and leadership, to allow leadership and a space for women to step into some of those more important roles. Our business climate in California. I have a few things I'd like to say about that, but I also want to add to that the general issue of poverty and how all of this intersects. Certainly these are daunting issues, and you're all here at a very magical moment in Sacramento. As I speak, there's approximately 1,000 Senate and Assembly bills working their way through our process in the next 4 weeks. This is the end of a 2-year session where bills will ultimately die, and we can bring them back next year. But really, it is a time of great anxiety, excitement, busyness, all those things. And of those 1,000 bills working their way through our Senate and Assembly and hopefully to the governor's desk, we're trying to address components of a number of the issues that you'll be talking about today. As a backdrop, I would say we've just approved the best budget California has seen in a generation. And that is something we need to applaud. It took a lot of effort, a lot of work to get here. We're at the end also of Governor Brown's second 8-year run leading our Golden State. And by any definition, this is an iconic governor. We know that. And I'm so thankful that Treasurer Chung spent time talking about our role in climate change, not just in the state, the country, but in the world. It's significant. In 2011, when I was first elected and Governor Brown came into office as governor for the second round, I recall, and I'm sure many of you do, the Economist article that talked about ungovernable California. It was a very low point in the history of our state. And I have to say, Governor Brown and the legislature and the citizen voters really turned California around. It took all of us working together to do that. So I will just kind of briefly highlight some successes because I want to get to the challenges. But I do think, my spouse calls me a glass half empty kind of person. And that's because I'm never really satisfied, to quote that philosopher Billy Joel. I'm never satisfied. I grew up in really pretty humble beginnings, and so I try to tell her, I'm not a glass half empty kind of person, I'm a realist. I'm a realist who thrives on desperation and getting things done. And I see every opportunity, every challenge that we face in California as an opportunity to think differently because we're forced to. We're actually forced to come up with creative and new ways to approach a problem. But successes, a few. Housing, $1.2 billion this year in the budget for housing, $500 million for homelessness, and the rest for affordable housing development. $500 million of that is from our greenhouse gas reduction fund that Governor Brown put into place, half a billion dollars. 250 estimated from my SB2, and thank you again for your support on that. So $1.2 billion, that's a success. The challenge? The money somehow seems to be the easy part these days when it comes to housing development. There are so many other issues that we have to get to, although getting the money was not easy. Transportation. The gas tax, more than $5 billion a year for transportation, will have an immediate impact if we can keep that in place and not lose that funding. That's $400 million a year for my home community of San Diego to fix roads, which is about goods movement, which is about jobs, which is about the success of this 5th largest economy in the world. And politics could take it all away. Homelessness, I've talked about. Poverty. This year we were able to put $360 million per year to increase CalWORKs grants to ensure no child lives in deep poverty. The Public Policy Institute talks about the number of kids in our state, and while we are doing everything we can on safety net services, it really is the cost of housing that's causing us to have the issues of poverty in the Golden State. K through 12 education. Our Prop 98 funding is the largest and highest it's ever been in history, $78.4 billion. Now, I want to remind you that in 2011-12, during the ungovernable years when we had the $26 billion deficit, we spent $44 billion on education. We've gone from $44 billion for K through 12 and K through 12 and community college. we have done a 66% increase in that short amount of time. That is a generation of kids that lack the resources in our schools. You're going to hear about education later today. Higher education. Because of the voters, we were able to put more money from the general fund. By percentage, we put money into Prop 98 for K through 12 and community college, but freeing up general fund money, we were able to put more money, or let me say start, to put more money into higher education and UC and CSU. We have a rainy day fund from a $26 billion deficit to a $16 billion rainy day fund. We have a $200 million safety net fund that we've just started this year to try to put money into, so when we go into the next recession, we're not going to have to face those drastic cuts in health and human services and safety net services as we did back in 2010, 2011. Those are some successes. Our challenges: water, wildfires, drought, housing, all of those issues. At least 9 people have died. We have 16 fires raging right now across our state. Every month in California for the last 2 years, we've had a fire. So when they talk about the new normal, that means we used to have a short fire season. Now it is all year long. We put $650 million additional dollars into fire this year, services. But our issues and our challenges, I would like to say that our challenges are those issues and those issues alone, but I don't really think that's true. I think, and to get to our business climate, when I talk about the challenges, California, our business climate, we talk about it all the time, and I'm always struggling as an elected official who has to go home to my community and talk to any of 131 community groups that I attend throughout the year in my district, the 39th district in San Diego. The discussion about business climate and trying to explain to people how we balance the issue of values. Thank you, Catherine, for that last night. How you balance the issue of our values in California, to have a green economy, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to make sure people have a living wage, to make sure that people have access to all that's great in the state. That requires regulation. Somebody has to enforce the ability that we're able to make those goals. And therein lies the challenge that we face in California when we look at an industry like agriculture, one of our biggest industries in California that affects so many people, small farms, many small farms. And you look at the regulation that goes into reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. I never thought I would be talking about cow flatulence. Okay, I gotta laugh. These are real issues. These are real issues, how you innovate, how you use technology, how we use our greatest minds to be able to find solutions, to reduce cost, for people to continue to be able to do the business that they want to do. Small businesses are still our backbone. We say that as a phrase, but it is reality, and the regulations that we put into place. So those are our challenges. How we balance the competing values against the regulations. That's one of our housing issues today. We struggled with it again and again and again. If it were a simple matter of money, we would be there. You know, the challenges I think we face, and those as an elected official, always, it's a pressure gauge. When you're an elected official, anywhere, I would imagine, you are subject to the winds of sensitivity of all that's going on in the world. And I tell you, our environment right now is toxic. It's toxic. People are anxious. People are worried. People are concerned. There are so many that want to take an all or nothing approach to every single issue. And that's not how you come up with good solutions that actually are sustainable long term. You know, years ago, I spent a few weeks at Harvard, and I read a book, many of you may remember it, it's called Leadership on the Line by Marty Linsky. And I think one of our biggest challenges as an elected official, as we're over there dealing with 1,000 bills, and we get very, very tuned into very small, specific things, is how we rise above, how we step away from the dance floor, as Marty Linsky would say, and look at what's going on in front of us and try to find the essence of what we really do need to do together to come up with solutions. And I would say that is our biggest challenge. It's not how we deal with wildfires, although that's important. It's not how we deal with water and drought, although that's important. We have found solutions to those things. It really is about how we look at stakeholders and deal with the various competing issues and find a way through that to solutions. I'll give you a good example. It's a simple one, really. My friend Scott Wiener from San Francisco has a bill, SB 1004, and it really is an issue that says, okay, we have mental health problems in the state of California. We have homeless people over here in the state capitol. I've seen a woman for 7 years over there. She's homeless. And we put $500 million towards homelessness this year, and yet there she is. There she continues to be. Mental health issues. So we had the No Place Like Home funding several years ago that Mayor Steinberg, then Pro Tem Steinberg, helped bring into place. We know that we have money to put towards mental health services, and we spread it thin, kind of like peanut butter on a piece of bread. And what we realize, and this bill says, let's take a larger percentage of that money and reallocate it to young people, the earliest age possible. Because if you catch it when it's just starting, when it's young, when young people are facing issues, then you change the life and the trajectory going forward. And then maybe we wouldn't have the woman on the bench in Capitol Park. But you know what? There are too many people that are counting on that money. Nobody wants to give up to make a change of policy that could make a huge difference going forward down the road for millions and millions of people. Those are the kinds of challenges I think we face as elected officials. How do you actually provide leadership using all of the data and what you share with us, your deep thinking, your ability to weigh the heavy issues? How do we take what you provide us and make dire decisions? And we may have to take a little from someone to do it and to have a better plan. It's what we did with cap and trade. It's what we did with the gas tax. I know, don't glaze over on me. But it's really about investing in a way for the long term, sustainability. These are the things that I think we have to grapple with as elected officials. And, you know, sometimes we do a really good job, and many times we don't. And that's why we need you. And that's where I'm going to end with a challenge, which is help us, those of us in elected office, have the incredible courage and strength sometimes to do the right thing. Like maybe pass a tax to rebuild our infrastructure and understand that the political will to do that may be hard and the pressure may be there, but if we have the support and the data to back it up, we can solve problems. So I wish you luck today. I look forward to the outcome of your discussions on all of these issues, so many issues. And I do believe that California is different. Much as John Chung said, we are different. We are the leaders. We are the ones who understand innovation. We can do it. If anyone can, we can, and the world is watching. But we have to do it with the understanding that we are in a different kind of environment, and yet we have to stay the course. We have to stay the course. We have to feel strong regardless of what it means to us individually. So I thank you for your time. Thank you for a few minutes, and thank you so much for your work. And good luck today as you go through all of those myriad of issues and challenges that we face in California.
Thank you very much, State Senator Pro Tem Toni Atkins. I've had a lot of things to admire about Senator Atkins over the years, but now knowing that she is also a fellow Billy Joel fan raises her to an even higher esteem in my eyes altogether. But thanks to both Senator Atkins and to John Chung, two tremendous keynote speakers to get us off on the right foot today. Let's give them one more round of applause. Well, before our next panel, Preparing California for the Future of Work, moderated by Jane Oates and including a number of very impressive panelists, including our California influencer, Eloy Oakley, the head of the California Community College System, we're going to take a 10-minute break. And what I would ask over the course of that break, in the spirit of where we started today, knowing that today's program is the beginning, a foundation for an ongoing set of conversations, we all have emails to return, we all have calls to return, but spend some time making connections, both at this break and at lunch and throughout the day. Because if the conversation is going to continue, it's going to need to start not just from the podium, but from the discussions that all of you have over the course of this gathering. Let's take 10 minutes. Fernando will be back at 10:13 precisely. Got it, pal? We'll see you in 10.